I'm going to tell you something, and it's really important that you don't panic. Okay? I'm not panicking. I'm not panicking. So it's important that you don't. I am 10 books behind on my reading goals right now. 10! But Lena, isn't it almost the end of the year? Yeah. Yeah, it is. But you know what? We are not the little bitches of fear here. We are actually professional half-assers. So I will be documenting my process of catching up on my reading goals by hook or by crook in this video. And I hope that if you have reading goals you are behind on, or as a matter of fact, any freaking goals whatsoever, I hope you catch the fever of delusion from me. Here's a little cough to get you started. And join me in cutting little corners to make sure that you still reach your goals. Because we don't expect ourselves to keep our promises to ourselves perfectly, but I hope we do expect to at least give our past selves the courtesy of an attempt. So if you love reading, but also apparently part of you really likes procrastinating, it's likely that you're already like halfway through several books. Me too. That's fine. That's where we're going to start. I'm going to start by finishing The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which is a book that, despite having 2 degrees in English literature, have never been set to read. And also, everybody says it's amazing, but also really depressing. And in what world would I try and get round to that? However, recently I wanted to, this is like such a sad reason to start a book. I wanted to cook Sylvia Plath's tomato soup cake from this recipe book. And I thought, that would feel weird if I've literally never read The Bell Jar. I've read Ariel, but I've never read The Bell Jar, which is kind of like her seminal text. So I was like, do you know what? Maggie Gyllenhaal reads the audiobook and I saw it on my library app and I was like, let's go. So I'm going to finish that book, and then basically my method for catching up on my reading goals is to just pick the shortest books ever. Like digestible, short. Often it's actually sometimes the short ones I don't get round to. So I do own a lot of short books that I have never read. So I think it's actually a really good excuse for me to get round to those. And also for you to get some recommendations on short books that are actually worth it. So I'll be telling you as we go along which books I'm loving, which books I kind of regret reading. There'll be some of them, I know. And together we are going to face this nemesis and catch the fuck up before this year comes to a close. Let's go. I finished The Bell Jar and this is how it made me feel. So then I had to read a book about cats. This is called The Writer's Cats by Muriel Barbary. And it made me feel a whole lot better. Muriel Barbary wrote The Elegance of the Hedgehog, which is one of my favourite books ever. It's a French translation. And this is presumably a procrastination project. It's a book written from the perspective of her 4 cats and what they think of her and how she writes. And how like really they are the stars of her writing, and without them her books would never get written, and they're like the only reason that she's successful. It's very sweet and it's full of little illustrations and like their characteristics and what they do, and I don't know if I'll keep it, but I did really think it was a great antidote to doom. And then also there are some really beautifully written bits, so this is an example of a bit that I liked. Well, as far as visual harmony and beauty go, we provide her with copious amounts of both in her daily life. What's more, we bring movement. We are flawless lines travelling through space. We are moving calligraphy, always changing, always sublime. The way we look, our flexible beauty, our pleasing curves make us living art, a natural source of inspiration. So yes, on with the Hope Core. I think I'm going to read this book called A Psalm for the Wild-Built because you all told me to read it and I bow to your wisdom. So hopefully that is hopeful too. Let's get on with it, shall we? So I have a smear test at 4:20. It's going to take everything inside of me, not to say blaze it, when I turn up. Today has been a very productive reading day so far. Last night I read quite a lot of the Psalms book because I could not get to sleep last night. So thanks to some kind of random insomnia for that little boost in my reading goals. And I also read it over breakfast this morning. During tasks during the day where I haven't had to use my brain too much, I've been putting on James and the Giant Peach read by James A. Caster, which is, when you hear it, it's the most perfect pairing in all of existence. I was signing some posters that I'm selling on my shop while I was tidying up, while I was in the shower, while I was making some lunch, while we were eating lunch. So I'm now going to pop some more James and the Giant Peach in my ears. I'm going to put the Psalms Becky Chambers book in my bag, kind of almost hoping, to be honest, that the NHS deals me a real one and I get to wait in the waiting room for a little bit so I can catch up on my reading goals. And yeah, we're now only 8 books behind the goal. Let's keep going! 420! So shockingly, I wasn't in that waiting room for very long at all, but I did end up coming home and finishing a psalm for the Wild Built. I did really enjoy it. I kind of, like, I had loads of things to read out to you that I'd highlighted, but then, like, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but when you finish a book and you put it down, it's like there are tendrils or like arms, tentacles in your house that come out and just like scoop the book up and absorb it. So I'm assuming that the book is in the walls somewhere because I can't find it anywhere. Maybe on my Patreon podcast, when I find the book, I'll read out all the cool quotes that I highlighted that were mainly towards the end of the book, to be honest. The book is written with a non-binary main character whose pronouns are they, them. I've read non-fiction books by people whose pronouns are they, them, but I've never read a main character where their pronouns are they, them, and also really interesting because they interact with the robot during it, whose pronouns are it, and it explains why it doesn't like people trying to gender it, or even they, them, the robot, because the robot's like, I'm an it. I don't want to be a they there. So I found that part of it really, really interesting. And for that reason alone, I really recommend it for those of us who are trying to train our brains into other pronoun spaces. I didn't really enjoy the style of writing, and that's no reflection on Becky Chambers' talent. I just don't think it was my kind of writing. So I don't think I'm going to read much more from her, but I did really enjoy the themes of the book. And I thought it was so sweet. And I think one of the main takeaways that I took away from it was this part where they kind of talk about how if you really genuinely believe that nature isn't out there, it's like you're also nature, then you don't really need to have a purpose. Like nature doesn't really have a purpose. It just enjoys being alive. And this idea that we need to find a purpose. Why did I almost... Wicked is going to come out soon in the cinemas, and I think that Glinda keeps inhabiting my body because every now and then I just find myself going, toss, toss. Yeah, like the very idea of having a purpose kind of defeats your theory that you are just part of nature and you're allowed to just exist. So I really, that's one of the main takeaways I took from that book, and I thought it was a really sweet one and one that I would recommend to other people. But I don't know if you'll catch me reading another Becky Chambers book soon, just because I just don't think it was my style. I finished the audiobook of James and the Giant Peach, and at a very sweet 2 hours and 49 minutes. I kind of wish it would have been longer. I mean, for the challenge, amazing, but I was just having such a good time with James Acaster. I actually cannot think of a better casting to read this book out, and he committed 110% the whole way through.
Delicious, said the old green grasshopper. Just fabulous, said the glowworm.
There were screeches, there were perfect different voices for each bug who lives in the peach. And I don't remember this from the last times that I read it, and I've just erased it, I guess, but there's like this whole part that's not in any of the musical or film adaptations or anything of them floating through the sky in the peach, and they meet the sky people who are painting a rainbow on the clouds, and they have like a bit of a back and forth with them, and the sky people try to sabotage them with hailstones. Does anyone else? I do not remember that from reading it as a child. Anyway, a good time was had by all. And then I had a very busy few days of work and writing and stuff, and I didn't really get much reading done, but I did in increments finish the book The Tenants by Bernard Malmerd, which is a book that I stole from work when I used to work at Penguin, maybe like 7 years ago, and have never actually read. It's about the 2 remaining tenants in a New York building that is about to be demolished, but one of them is a squatter and one of them has rent control on their flat, so they're not legally allowed to be evicted, and they're being pressured daily by the landlord to move out, and they won't because they're trying to write a novel, and they believe that if they leave the building, the spirit of the book will leave them as well. Like they're on a roll. They can't leave the building where they started the book because they think they will never finish the book if they leave the building. The other person that's in the building is also trying to write a book. He is a black man who is learning about the history of racial discrimination and trying to write about it, and is very conflicted about it. And Harry, the legal tenant, is a Jewish writer. And the problem is that Harry is a little bit racist, like kind of would say that he's not, but definitely kind of is. And Willie, who is the black writer, is openly anti-Semitic and like kind of scarily violently so. And it's about them navigating this space together and both trying to write their novels and setting out to be like, we're both writers. Like that's the main thing that matters, right? We can get past all these other things because we're both writers and we're in this building and nobody else lives in this building and it's barely got any heating and the landlord keeps turning off the water. Like that kind of thing, but it kind of spirals into a little bit of psychosis and mania for both of them, and they both slowly deteriorate mentally. So it's quite an like awful book to read, especially before bed. It's quite depressing, but I was also just cheered up because when you read great writing, it's very cheering and it is beautifully written and like just loads of parts in it. Here's a bit that I underlined of the character Willie talking about his writing. I was writing like Richard Wright and trying to sound like James Baldwin, and that made me write things that didn't belong to me. Then when I finally raised up some of my own ideas, they played dead. Also, lots of people who jived around in my mind just laid down and died when I wrote them in language. Man, I don't appreciate the fright it throws in your gut when your writing won't go where you point it to. And like that idea of your ideas playing dead and like pretending that they're not gonna come out, and you as the writer know that they're not dead, but you're just like, can you just play ball for like 1 second? But yeah, I just think from a like sentence perspective, there were some great sentences in this book. And also I'm very guilty of mainly reading books that have come out in the last 10 or 15 years. So to read a book from the 70s was eye-opening, although like incredibly dated when it comes to the way it treats characters and the language that it uses, just to flag. But it was a really interesting look into history and the history of New York at a very specific time in its own history. So that was that. I'm now working on Richard Ayoade's audiobook, which is again like 4 hours long. I think I'm in the last hour. He's written this book that's like a spoof of a documentary. It's basically like he's invented a famous screenwriter who is his spitting image of Richard Ayoade's spitting image, and he has invented a whole history and line of characters that knew this person, and it's about him, Richard Ayoade, going out into the field and trying and failing to make a documentary about this man's life, Harold. And it's very like tongue-in-cheek written. Like if you like how Joe Dunthorne writes, the guy who wrote Submarine, which subsequently and probably not coincidentally Richard Ayoade directed, then you will bloody love this kind of writing, and I really enjoy it. In audiobook form, I am enjoying it less. I kind of wish I had a physical copy of it, but then again, Richard Ayoade's great at reading and like all of the comedy comes out that way. So I am enjoying it, but I really don't understand. It's like definitely very experimental, that I don't completely understand the direction that it's trying to take me in, and maybe it's not trying to take me in a direction and that's the point, but it is like a good thing to have on in the background and have a little giggle at, because it is very like line by line, it's very funny. What I will pick up next in physical form, who can say, but behind me I've got quite a lot of sewing to do. I'm trying to make a dress. Who knows which video is going to come out first, but I'm filming another video right now where I'm making a dress for the Wicked premiere, so I'm going to whack on some more of that audiobook and see how I get on. Whew. Okay, I need your deepest sympathies, because since we last spoke, I have read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books. 5 books. 5 books. It's not nothing. It's not nothing. But is it good enough? No, because I'm still 4 books behind. And how does that make sense mathematically, Lena? Because for the numerologically well-endowed among you, you will note that that means I have read since this challenge began 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books. And as I started 10 books behind, you'd think I'd be on time, wouldn't you? You'd think I'd be all paid up on my reading debts. But no, because time keeps happening. Time is progressing, which is something that I wasn't warned about. But as you move through time, like you owe more books to the challenge. Do you see what I mean? As I haven't been reading as fast as I need to, I've started owing more books to the challenge as the weeks have gone on. Do you see what I mean? So I'm still 4 books behind, and I think it's not fair. But I am going to need to read some more. Let me tell you what I've been reading since we last spoke. I went a little rogue. I'll give you that. And I picked up quite a big book for this challenge. This book is 351 pages long. And you might think, Lena, that was not the plan. Don't read a book like that. But 1, I wanted to. I really wanted to. And two, it's like a fragmented memoir, a little Sheila Hetty-esque in the way that it's written. So lots of the pages only have this much writing on them. It's kind of like a stream of consciousness diary about a woman's marriage falling apart and all of the hurt that is caused in that. Fans of Lily Allen's new album will freaking love this book, and it actually stabbed me through the heart. There were so many beautiful moments in it. Like, listen to this. Betrayal is intrusion and it is theft. It is a hijacking of common ground. It takes the story you thought you were living, yanks it away and hands back another, putrid, stinking, filthy version, a story soaked in someone else's fluids. It traps you inside a narrative you never signed up to, a book you never bought, a story you never wrote, and says, "This is what was here the whole time, only you were too stupid to see it. I thought I was in the story of my marriage. The words look the same on the page, the binding, the feel of the paper between thumb and forefinger, it's all the same. But I have been in someone else's story, playing a bit part at that all along." God damn. This is by Miriam Robinson, who is somebody who is very prolific in the book world and has worked for a very long time at the bookseller and now is an amazing part of the Booksellers Association. So when she told me she had a book coming out, I obviously immediately pre-ordered it for it to arrive at my local bookshop, and I have been absolutely famished to read it ever since. And I think you can tell by my little budgie post-it notes that I freaking loved it. So huge recommendation, especially if you're a Sheila Hetty fan and you love a kind of fragmented, reflective memoir about starting over. Like, gee whiz, I don't regret whatever time that lost me in this challenge, because it was all worth it. Then I read this tiny little book called 10 Poets Defend Their Cities from Giants Strange Beasts. And this is a collection of 10 poets who have all imagined what kind of beast might come for their town or their homeland, and how that would play out. Taste wise, there was only a couple that I really love. Honourable mentions for Aaron Kent's A Minor City, and also Sean Wei Keng's A Triptych of Recipes to Destroy and Save for Glasgow, from which I had to highlight this bit. What the hell is this? Watch as the creature you have summoned shrinks back and the city forgives you and offers you newness. Watch as the ruins transform back into flats. Watch as the fires you have sparked flicker and dim. Watch as two figures from opposite sides of the world stand hand in hand on the squinty bridge and wordlessly smile at each other. Watch as one of the beacons of blue lagoons warmly light up as the sun sets. Watch as you realise that the people of this city will reclaim this city for themselves. Watch as, instead of destroying it all, they work to bend steel and blend concrete together. Watch as they build for themselves a better future, not just for themselves, but for all of those who will come after. Watch as resurrection occurs and your ancestors appear in ghostly forms and embrace each other and cry. Stick it on my wall. I need more hope like this. It's beautiful. So some of it's literally monsters coming for their city, and like Godzilla, spooky ghosts, that kind of thing. And sometimes it's the things that have deteriorated their city and what saves them from it. So a really, really lovely collection from a small indie press called Sidekick Books. Then this is a really great cheat sheet for those of you wanting to catch up on your reading goals. Love reading a play. Big fan of reading a play. I don't think you really citizens are encouraged to read plays. It's only really something that you might be familiar with doing, and it's not a completely weird act if you have studied English in some capacity or drama. But I think everyone should just be picking up a play and reading it. The scripts are so good, and we know that they sell as well because everybody bought the Fleabag script. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, this is a show that I saw a month or so ago called Born with Teeth by Liz Duffy Adams, and it featured Ncuti Gatwa. And that was literally the only reason that I went. That and the fact that it was about Christopher Marlowe and Shakespeare in this fictional situation where they write a play together, which is something that there is some linguistic evidence that they might have done. So it's an imagination of what their time in the writing room would have been together and what they would have said and done together. That's all I'm going to say from that picture. Wonderful. Can't believe I can't just go and see it every week. Pissed that it's no longer showing, but I hope that it all tore or something because it was so good. Then I read Surge by Jay Bernard. This is a audiobook that I got from my library. They are an incredible poet. They were published by the publisher that I used to work for, which is why I know their work. And I know that they'd performed Surge in their own audiobook, and I was like, let's whack that on. It's literally like, I think it's 90 minutes, and they're an incredible performer. It's a really, really interesting look at care and a horrible fire that happened in London, and like the racial tensions between the police because of it. And there were just loads of parts of it that I was kind of annoyed that I didn't have the physical version so I could underline stuff, but loved it. No notes. And then finally, I was in a Oxfam bookshop and I picked up a copy of A Time for New Dreams by Ben Okri. This is a collection of work that he has written that has been published in various different places, but it's a look at the future and politics and like how we dream about our own futures. And I highlighted quite a lot of it. It's really, really beautiful. And I think that I am probably going to record a Patreon podcast about all of the thoughts I have about this book, because there are just too many to cram in here. Like, he's talking about how frivolous poetry seems and how it like doesn't have that much substance technically, but then how substantial they really are. And he says, who can weigh a word on a scale, even against a feather of truth? And yet how much words weigh in our hearts, in the imagination, in dreams echoing down the ages, as durable as the pyramids. Which is so, like, really ties into this idea that I've been thinking about, that I've documented in another video I did about aging, where I was like, I do actually want to start memorizing poetry and like some of my favorite works from other people, because I think it's, well, I know it's like technically good for your brain function and it's just really like medically good for you to memorize stuff, but also just because of the end, because of the apocalypse. I would like to have at least a few of my faves up in here, just in case they turn the cloud off and then the clouds. Anyway, game plan for finishing this challenge, because I think we all know it needs to end soon. This is getting painful. Currently, I am technically reading 4 books, and I have 4 books to go. Will I be able to finish all of those? I don't know. The 2 that I am halfway through that I think would be easy to finish. One is I'm still reading this Richard A. Hardy audiobook. I'll stick it on now. I'm finishing my Wicked dress over here, so I will stick it on. I think I've probably got, I think I've still got like an hour left, and I can make it. I will make it. I'm just not, like, because there's no plot that's propelling it forward, even though it's quite funny, I never just stick it on. So I could definitely do that. And then I am also more than halfway through this School of Life book called How to Age. I'm on page 83 and there is only 141 pages. So like we could finish that tonight easily. So I reckon I could probably finish 2 more today. The other 2 books that I'm currently reading are quite big books, so I think maybe I'll go for something smaller. Ideas that I have are reading another play. This is Giant by Mark Rosenblatt, and this is a critical fictional biography of a certain time in Roald Dahl's life that I saw on stage recently and freaking loved. So I bought that because I wanted to reread it and highlight stuff anyway, so I might as well do that. And then also I have got this book which is called Non-Binary Jane Austen, and it is a small book of academic essay thought bubbles by an associate professor at the Francis Marion University, and it is about how Austen envisions a non-binary future that moves beyond the 2-sex model of gender, which I don't really know if she is doing, but you know, you just see a book that's like weird enough to catch your eye and are like, I'm willing to hear the argument for this, and it's only 95 pages. So while that is an academic text, I do think I could probably finish that in one sitting if I really put my mind to it. And tomorrow I'm going to be on a train. Although, what am I talking about? I can't read on trains. I get travel sick. While I'm waiting for the train, because actually, if you live in Britain, you'll know that actually reading a whole book while you're waiting for a train is completely possible, if not probable at this point. Nationalise the trains! Anyway, I'll report back. But we continue. We're so close. We're so close. Lads. I did it. Look at that. Took longer than I thought. But the important thing is we're back on track and my conscience feels clear. I feel ready to end the reading year feeling calm and collected. And 10 more books to go doesn't sound that bad to me. I actually think that's going to be very pleasurable in my December. I, of course, finished the Richard Ayoade audiobook. It was fine. I also finished the School of Life book by Anne Kampf called How to Age. I found there were loads of quotes in this that will probably resurface in videos in the future, because I'd like to make more videos about aging, because I feel like the internet is full of young people or old people not addressing their aging, and I think it's just interesting. So I thought this book was really useful for my purposes, and especially if you want to think a little bit more about death. I think it was really useful, but it is also like a little bit dated, because like this was written, well, it was published in 2014, and this is before buccal vac removal. Like it's just it's a whole other world now, Anne. It's got to another level. You don't even want to hear about AI. So yeah, interesting for me, but I don't know if I'd recommend it. I went ahead and I did read another play. As mentioned, I read the play Giant by Mark Rosenblatt, and it was really great to revisit the performance that I've seen on stage, and I just think it's a really interesting play that I could talk about forever, but we simply don't have time. But I thought it was like super thought-provoking, and there were just some really clever paragraphs in it. I didn't get around to reading non-binary Jane Austen. But let me know if you do get around to reading it. I'm sure I will in the future, especially as I'm probably going to attend the Jane Austen Festival next year. But I did read, cunningly, 2 books that are both 50 pages long, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is how it's freaking done. This is Walking Distance by Lizzie Stewart. It's kind of a graphic novel, but it does have lots of paragraphs in it about her thoughts existing as a woman and walking around London. This is just so freaking beautiful. And then my favourite place to find book recommendations, Craig's Hands. Craig was really reading this in bed next to me, and I spotted that it was quite short and he was having a good time with it. So as soon as he closed the book, I just went, yoink, that'll be for me, please. This is Claire Keegan's So Late in the Day, and it is about a man in Dublin drinking a whole bottle of champagne and thinking about why a woman left him and what he could have done differently and how he misunderstood the situation. And it's like a commentary on toxic masculinity and the like unconscious nature of how people enact it without even really thinking about it. And I thought it was really interesting. I didn't think it was like the best thing I've ever read, but I thought it was really chilling and sad and thoughtful. So there you have it. That is the story of how I got all caught up on my reading goals. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I've inspired you to remember that even though it is so late in the day, it is not impossible, and you are allowed to half-ass and cut as many corners as you see fit. If you like reading and chatting about it with other people, in 2026, I am going to be doing some read-alongs on my Discord with audio hangouts and like a constant live chat. So if you would like to read thoughtful books with other people from around the world, you should totally join the Gumption Club, my Patreon. They're also responsible for making this video happen, so thank you so much to them. Happy reading. Frog Snog out.